guys, welcome back to Lila podcast. I am your host Alexa, and today I am joined by nobody. This is my first solo episode, which is a little bit weird, and I do plan to do a few of them like this. I do like to have different guests, but sometimes you just gotta kick it solo, and I feel like I really like to interview, but I also think it's important for my audience to get to know me a little bit. Which is kind of funny I say that because today I'm actually not talking about me at all, but I am talking about my experience when I was volunteering with an organization and meeting cool people. And I know what you might be thinking, why are you not interviewing these people for your podcast? And, I did think about it and I wanted to be able to use some of the audio, and maybe I still will down the line. But ultimately, when I conducted these interviews, I didn't say that it was for a podcast, and I just didn't feel like it was right to use it, and it would be a little bit choppy. And so ultimately, I just really want to talk about some of these things that I learned from the interviews and introduce you to some of these people and then direct you to where I do have the full interviews, which is in blog post form. And yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about the time that I was volunteering with Daughters Rising in rural Thailand. That's in Chiang Mai, which is north, and it is one of the other big cities. You probably hear about Bangkok a lot, but Chiang Mai is definitely up there as well. And you guessed it, this month we are talking all about Thailand and my time there. And I feel like it's just so crazy because I can't believe it's already been a year since I was there. But at the same time, it does feel like a long time ago. And I wish that part of me wishes I would have done things in real time. And another part of me, every time I go somewhere, is like, I don't want to be living just to post things, and I don't want to be doing things just to be able to post things. And like, I'm not gonna lie, even I would be pretty happy without social media, but because of the nature of the work that I'm doing and I want to be doing, I kind of need to be on it. And I'm happy, it's fun, I'm happy to be on it, but I don't feel the need to document everything. And I also don't necessarily think I'm like, who cares, what I'm doing every day? I don't know, maybe people care. But anyway, I just really, really need to talk about my time in Thailand, and I especially need to talk about my time with Daughters Rising. And I did touch on it a little bit in last week's episode. If you haven't listened to it, definitely go check it out. I spoke with James de la Cloche. He is a rescue elephant photographer at Lai Orchid, which is a eco lodge and elephant sanctuary in Chiang Mai, and that's where I was staying. And he is actually British, so he's not Thai, but he does live in Thailand now. And he just has a really incredible life story and outlook on life and the meaning of things and being happy. And I found it so interesting, especially as somebody that kind of grew away from being raised religious and now feeling more like spiritual and getting more in touch with that kind of like meditative side. And he just had so many good things to say. And of course, the nature of his work is really cool. I mean, he's an elephant photographer with people. He just does the most amazing things, and you really should check him out. So definitely listen to last week's episode if you haven't yet. And if you do enjoy, of course, really, really appreciate ratings, reviews, sharing with your friends, following. It seriously helps me out so much. Okay, on to Lai Orchid and how it's connected with Daughters Rising. Actually, no. First, I think I should talk about how I even got involved in the first place. So we're going to go back really far because this goes all the way back to like 2020. Yes, 2020, when I started an internship, and I interviewed for this internship with an organization called 100 Rural Women, and their work is in creating connections and inspiring leadership of rural women, essentially women's empowerment, getting access to resources, and providing education in different areas. And I was really excited about this work. I found myself really into women's empowerment, especially when I got into college and I was just really getting into this stuff. And so finding this internship, especially during a time when all these things that I also thought I would do interning wise for the psychology part of my degree was getting canceled. And so I was kind of scrambling, and then I found this entirely remote one with a nonprofit, which I was interested in nonprofit work, interested in women's empowerment. And I spoke with the founder, Teresa, who I just owe so much to. And she was so fired up about it. And one of the things that she had talked about in her dreams for the organization was that she wanted to take it statewide, national, and eventually international. And I just had stars in my eyes thinking about, oh, we can do this and this and that and this and that. And, of course, nonprofits need funding, so we didn't necessarily achieve all those big dreams that I thought could happen. But ultimately, I did go on to get that internship. I did a lot of work. I worked with 100 Rural Women for 3.5 years, and actually very recently stepped away from that position. All in good heart, all in best wishes. Like my boss, I will always have a good relationship with her, and I wish nothing but the best for the organization and for myself and everything. I just really wanted to focus on Lila, to be honest, and really grow this and put my energy here. Anyway, so after my internship, I was hired to do these spotlight profiles, and spotlight profiles were something that we did to highlight successful women. And, success, that doesn't have one exact definition. And so these women were quote unquote successful in all these different areas. And it was really something that it fired me up. I felt so inspired after these interviews, and it was really cool. I was like, I get paid to do this. I find these cool women, I reach out to them, I interview them, I put together an article piece for our website, I edit a video, put that on our YouTube, work with our social media team to market that. And then these women have this really cool thing, and they always, it's so funny because more often than not, I feel like I got women that were like, oh my gosh, you want to interview me? And it's like, yes, you're amazing. And so I really loved that work. And so when I was going to go backpacking in Southeast Asia, I had a friend who had gone to Thailand, and she had recommended to me to visit Lai Orchid if I wanted to see elephants because they are the most ethical. They do good work. She thought I'd really like it. And so I checked it out. Mind you, before I went on my trip to Southeast Asia, I had already had a plan to launch a podcast in mind. Now, honestly, this podcast was years in the making. I had wanted to launch. Now, Lila, the website, the brand, the blog, launched in May of 2022. And I wanted to launch a podcast by that fall, which is so funny because now it's been 2 years before I did it. And that's just because so many other things happened and got in the way. And yeah, I guess part of me wishes I would have done it sooner. And another part of me is happy because I think everything happens when it's supposed to and in due timing. And again, I'm getting off track. But circling back to this, when I started looking into this, I thought, oh, this is really cool. I could talk to some of these people for my podcast. And when I went backpacking, I was actually staying on as a staff member with 100 Rural Women. Just my hours were sliced in half. I did a lot of front loading on the work and planned things out ahead of time. And yeah, just took the pay cut as far as the hours go. That was fine by me. And I was backpacking around, and so it was a week before I was going to leave, and I was planning some things to do in Thailand because if you know anything about me and my solo travel adventures, I don't actually book things in advance. I have a loose plan. I do a ton of research on each country I want to go to, how to be respectful there, learn the different parts of the language, areas I want to go to, what I might want to do in those countries, what route I would take. But I don't book anything until it's actually the time to be there. Because I like to be a little flexible. And again, I'm glad that I did that because it allowed me to have this flexibility in my schedule to be able to spend this time in rural Chiang Mai with Daughters Rising and Lai Orchid. And so what had happened was it was a week before I left, and I was panicking because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to throw a whole wrench in my whole plan. Should I just forget it? But I simply cannot do that. I think it's from The Office, but when Michael says, I've had this idea since lunch and I'm not giving up on it now. That's how I feel about my ideas. When I get stuck on something, I'm like, nope, I'm doing it. Sorry, no going back now. And so that's how I felt about this. And it just felt so perfect. I was so drawn to their mission. I was so drawn to what they do, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute here, of course. But I was just jazzed up. So I emailed them and I was like, hey, I see you take volunteers. I know this is short notice, but I'm going to be in Thailand and Chiang Mai next week. Can I volunteer with you? Can I learn about your organization? Like, I'm happy to do this. This is what I have experience in. I'd love to interview some of you guys. And so what I wanted to do was interview them, some people there, for spotlight profiles for 100 Rural Women's website, therefore giving them some recognition over here, because also in Minnesota, if you didn't know this, we have a pretty large Karen population, and they are rooted in a Karen or village over in Chiang Mai. And so I thought that would be really interesting. And also it would help fulfill this dream that Teresa had to take 100 Rural Women International. And something I wanted to do was really, really help her fulfill some of these things that she wanted to do with this organization. I really believed in it, and I believed in her, and she believed in me. And I felt like we could do these things. And so when I found this, I was like, these are the perfect people to highlight. This is exactly what we want to do. These are incredible rural women making an impact, and for rural women. And so I reached out, and then they got back to me and they were like, look, we usually don't have volunteers stay for a week. It's usually longer, but I think we could use help in a couple different areas, and you'll stay in a local homestay in the village with a Karen family. And I did pay for it. So it was like, even if all I did was go stay there and hang out for the week, then it would be helpful, because, you know, you're paying the family. That helps them with their bills and everything like that. And so I was like, wow, super cool experience. I'm going to go stay in the village with a family. They did not speak any English, mind you, and I do not speak Karen. And so that was a bit of a barrier, but it was also a really cool experience, which I'll get into a bit later, talking about that part of the time there. Yeah, so we set it up, and I was like, okay, this is crazy, but I'm just going to throw a wrench in all of my plans for the next couple of months. And it ended up extending my time in Thailand, that along with getting horrific food poisoning. I was sick for so long, and I really wanted to call off the whole trip after that. But that was after I volunteered. No problem there. So we're not going to get into that today. That is actually for, I think, next week's episode, or maybe a few down the line. I know you're so excited to hear about my food poisoning, but you're just going to have to wait. So anyway, we organized it, and then I was going to be in Chiang Mai, the city, for a few days before I headed to them to start. And so I was there from Sunday to Sunday, and it was pretty flexible. Like, I could have probably stayed longer, could have, whatever. But before I get into what I was doing there, I just want to talk about who they are and how they're connected. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, which again, you should. But Lai Orchid is this eco lodge hotel resort in Chiang Mai. And they have a cafe and these bungalows. Really, really beautiful place. Like, seriously, the most amazing views. It's so peaceful. These bungalows, which I did not stay in, because, they're for guests. They were gorgeous. And that's where James shoots a lot of those elephant photo shoots. So if you're interested in looking into those, definitely check that out. I've linked all this stuff in the show notes, like linked to all of these places. So definitely check them out. Check his work out. Go get an elephant photography session if you must, if you may, if you indulge. So Daughters Rising is based in Chiang Mai, like I've said, and they work courageously on the empowerment of young girls to pursue education and end cycles of poverty, exploitation, and trafficking. Their work centers around preventing human trafficking. Now, you may be wondering how they do this through scholarships for education, and basically the thing is that giving girls access to education gives them better opportunities to get better jobs so they don't need to take unnecessarily high-risk jobs, or for parents to sell their daughters or marry them off. And they really work a lot in teaching these girls confidence in themselves as well, and do a lot of other work. So some of the ways that they fulfill their mission is through scholarships. Those scholarships are primarily awarded to young at-risk women refugees from Myanmar, as well as ethnic minority women from surrounding villages. And the scholarships give these young women an opportunity to fund their higher education. Next, they also have a children's house, and this is a place children can live safely, have stability, and access to school. They're treated with compassion and loving kindness that every child deserves. And I got to go to this kid's house and meet the children and the house mother and father. And the father took me around the garden and showed me a few different plants that they have there. The kids were playing around with kittens and running around, and it was just really cool. And I actually spent most of the week with Malida, who I will speak about later, and she is one of the head staff at the Children's House. Next, they also provide jobs at their partner social business, Lai Orchid. And that's an eco lodge, an elephant sanctuary, like I said. And this is where these ethnic minority women can gain experience in hospitality, speaking English, and technical skills, and so much more. And then they also host or organize local clinics and workshops. So while I was there, they were planning a visual screening for local people to get their vision tested and receive glasses if needed at no cost, and a couple other things. And so those are things that are so necessary. Another one that I believe they did was they brought in some female lawyers to talk about, like, what does a healthy relationship look like? What's this? Help if you feel like you're in an abusive relationship, we can help you get out, and all of these different things. Like, they're providing access to these resources that are so important to have. And it's just like, if you don't know, then you don't know. If you don't know that you can't see well until you get your vision screened and then the glasses help, like, that's a world changer for somebody. And knowing, oh, wait, maybe this isn't okay in a relationship. Maybe I don't have to endure this. And these are resources that can help me get out. I mean, they're just doing amazing work in so many different areas. And lastly, if you do visit, I don't believe they have an online shop at this time, but they do have an on-site shop. So if you do find yourself visiting there, they do sell handmade crafts and the Karen shirts and home goods. And these women do love for you to purchase them, wear them. They love to share their methods and their art and their culture. If you purchase from this on-site shop, then you're helping bring financial security to these local families and prevent children from needing to contribute to bringing in income for their families and potentially taking dangerous jobs. So just by visiting, you are helping. Like, you don't have to volunteer with Daughters Rising to be making an impact, but by visiting Lai Orchid, you're helping fulfill all of this work. And that's why I think that it's really important to think about where you're spending your dollar. And it's so easy for people to get tripped up into spending it in places where maybe the animals are being mistreated. And this is going back to Lai, I guess, because I'm jumping around a little bit here. I just want to urge you to really think about where you're spending your dollars, because there are social businesses that do have really great causes behind them, like Lai Orchid with having Daughters Rising behind them. And spending your dollar there means you're doing a lot of really incredible things. You're a part of this mission and helping them continue to fulfill that. And I want you to know that, because I want people to think about that more, about where they're spending their money and the impact that they're making. It's like saying shop local versus shopping these big corporate brands, you know? It's kind of similar. Your money makes more of an impact here. So in my time with Daughters Rising, I actually got to learn so much about Lai Orchid. I got to do an elephant experience myself. I got to go bamboo rafting, which was a freaking blast. And I got to learn about the work and what makes them ethical, what makes them a sanctuary. And so some things that I feel like make them stand out, which I have talked about in a blog post that I'll link below as well. Some things that I really appreciate about them is that they don't own any of the elephants. The elephants belong to the local families. Each elephant has their own mahout who takes care of them. And these mahouts care about their elephants. They're essentially an elephant trainer. They take care of feeding them, walking around with them, making sure that they're not in harm. And it's really, really special and sweet. And another thing actually is that they essentially rent the bungalows, I know for sure on Riverside, from local people. So it's like they're running the business, but the local people are still making money from it. So it's not like taking away from local places, which I think we see a lot when these big resorts come in and take over a local place and it gets too expensive for local people to even live there. That's not what they are. And I actually had the opportunity to sit down with the founder. Her name is also Alexa or Alexandra. And so I'm going to refer to her as Alexandra in this just for clarification, but she does usually go by Alexa. I just wanted to talk to her about how did this start? How did you get this idea? Because she's actually originally from New York and she moved to Thailand 9, maybe 10 years ago. And she's been there since. Before moving there, she was doing some other work. She was always involved in important work, I feel like. She was doing some work with different organizations, also in like safe housing, orphanage in Nepal. And she actually studied film production. And so that's what she was working on. And she was just working 14 hours a day, trying to make ends meet, doing mostly commercial films, music videos, and ads. And she just wasn't really feeling passionate. But she started this nonprofit along with her co-founder, Hannah, when they saw a gap that needed to be filled. Because I said, how did you know about this issue? How did you come to find it? And she said that in Thailand, there are a few organizations that focus on rescuing girls, but there weren't any that focused on prevention. And prevention is super, super important because you can identify the people that are vulnerable and you can't undo what happens to somebody after they've already been trafficked. You can't undo that trauma. You can help them, but you can't undo it. And so what she wanted to do was work in that prevention and empowerment and education. At the time, she didn't really see that there were organizations that were serving the most vulnerable people, which are refugees, migrant workers, and people that might not have documents to stay in Thailand. And so actually the nature of this work is quite dangerous. And so I want to be really careful about what I talk about and what I share because they are doing things that other people aren't doing. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a necessary way, in a social good way, but in a way that isn't for the faint of heart. I really just wanted to know what made her want to pursue this, what made her learn about this issue. And she said that her and her co-founder Hannah had gone on a trip here to do some research, and they had met a girl who had been trafficked, and they thought that they could easily put her in a safe house because they knew some organizations and they couldn't take her because she wasn't documented. And so she thought the person who needs the most help right now, there's no place that can serve her legally. And that's where Daughters Rising comes in. So the way that Lai Orchid and Daughters Rising work together is that after they pay for the staff and the costs and the food and care for the elephants from Lai Orchid, then the proceeds fund Daughters Rising. Lai Orchid was created as a social business to fund the work of Daughters Rising. So I asked Alexandra what makes Lai Orchid the ethical option compared to some other places that people may go. And she had some really good things to say. She said that they rescue the elephants from the camps where they do have to do things like riding, carrying people on heavy metal chairs. And that's not just that the elephants have a good life, but it's that the people have a good life. So they ensure that the mahouts have access to their rights and they get paid fair wages, and they don't control their passport and movement or anything. And so if the elephants' caretakers are treated well and happy, it also ensures that the elephants are going to be happy and treated better. Basically, what I did over the course of this week with Daughters Rising, because where do I fit into this, is something that I didn't expect to be doing, but just kind of fell into, was teaching English to a few girls from the village. Now, I'm not a teacher, and I don't know other languages, and I have never taught English. And so this was an interesting experience, but these girls, they were maybe like 12 to 13, and they were just so sweet and eager to learn and excited that I had no choice but to become an English teacher and figure figure my shit out. And so in the morning for a few hours before, I was like, okay, looking like, how do I teach someone English? What should I be teaching them? And the reason, so I had to think about the reason they wanted to learn English. And it was because they wanted to open a cafe or work at a restaurant to be able to make money and have a job. And so I thought, okay, what are some things that we're going to need to know if we want to work in hospitality? And so those are the kind of sentences and words that we worked on. And it was just really lovely. And it's so interesting because I've learned so much about adulthood, about being like, oh, I actually don't know what I'm doing, but everybody thinks that I do. That's how I felt. And to these girls, I'm so sorry if I failed you. But really, we only had a few sessions. I was only there for a week. So we weren't going to get fluent, but we were going to maybe learn a few things. I hand wrote a few worksheets. And then it was really nice because Malida, who was my buddy there, and I know I said I'd talk about her and I still haven't yet, but I will. She helped translate, so I'd write something in English, and she has a degree in English. So she knows what she's talking about. She knows what she's doing. She's incredibly smart and intelligent and was super helpful to both parties here. And I just can't thank her enough for that. And so that was a really cool experience. And then another thing I did was help with some of the design things. So I helped design a big newsletter template and annual report, since that was something they wanted to be working on, and worked with the girl who is in charge of those things and helping kind of learn how to make things really visually appealing, work with Canva, all those things. So that was super fun because that is a lot of what I do, both for Lila and what I was doing for a couple nonprofits when I was subcontracting for nonprofits before, which I am no longer doing. But that's what I was doing before, the social media stuff. And then I also interviewed people working there, and I just, like a lot of times, I just sat at the cafe, which is a big open air cafe, and I will post pictures of it on my Instagram, and you can go check it out. I believe there's some on my website, but definitely go check out the Instagram. So I interviewed a few people, and I'm going to tell you all about them, and I'm excited to do that. So without further ado, the first person that I want to talk to you about is Malida. And the reason I want to talk about her first is because she was my buddy this week that I was there. We were attached at the hip. She was always with me and helping coordinate things, and like coordinating my transportation from my homestay to Chiang Mai, and the kind of work I would be doing. And it was just really, really incredible. I just want to tell you about Malida. Malida, she's from a village in rural Chiang Mai, not the village we were staying in. She's from a different one. And there she lives with her husband, her cats, and now, as of recently, her sweet, sweet baby. So congratulations, Malida. I'm so excited for you. A little bit about Malida, and you can read more about her in the full interview that I've linked below, but she was born into a big family as the middle child of 7 kids, and they lived in a rural area without electricity or internet. And at a young age, she actually, about 6 years old, she had to move to live with her grandparents 6 hours away, so she could go to school, and she moved there with her brother. And that was actually, she had told me that this was a really difficult experience for her, and I would love to be able to use my interview with Malida for this podcast episode, but it wasn't something that we had originally agreed upon for it to be used. And so I just want to be respectful of all of that and her privacy, and maybe eventually I'll be able to release it. But right now, I just want to give her the space to soak up that time with her baby boy and just maybe tell a little bit about her story, and maybe someday we'll get to hear from Malida herself. So she had expressed to me that it was hard to be so far away from home at such a young age, and she did go and graduate, and she had some really difficult experiences in childhood that I don't want to speak about for her, but she does touch on some of them in the interview. And so she had a difficult time with living with her grandparents. She felt like her brother was favored, and it was just really hard for her. She felt unloved, and I think that's part of where her passion for the work that she does now in the children's house comes from. And so she did live with her grandparents, and she said that it did get better in time, but she lived with them through high school, and she continued her studies. in university, and she studied English, and she loves to study. She thinks education is super important, but she didn't like the city, so she went back to the jungle, and that is how she ended up with Daughters Rising. And she actually started with Lai Orchid working as a receptionist, and now she works at Daughters Rising with the kids' house, and then of course she was working with me as a volunteer. She does this work in the kids' house where she goes and spends time with them and mentors them, and her main goal is to make sure that they feel valuable and very loved, because they deserve that. And I know that she puts her whole heart into it, and I think that's difficult. I mean, that's a really heart-wrenching job, and some of these children, like some of them don't have parents that are living at this children's house, but some of them do, and they just have to live far away so that they can go to school or for other reasons. And so I feel like Malida is being this person that she felt like she needed as a kid. And that's just such an incredible thing that Daughters Rising is empowering her to do. And it's just really cool. And at the beginning, on my first day, we met at the cafe, and then she was just kind of showing me around the whole thing. So we walked down through the village, and they have mountainside and riverside bungalows, and so these mountainsides are the ones that overlook this beautiful view. They're right by the cafe, and then the riverside ones are over by the river, and they have more of like a in the nature jungle feel. They're closer to the elephant. It's just, both are different experiences, but both are really cool. It just depends what you're looking for. And so we got to go through there. There's another cafe over there, and so then local women from the village all wanted to eat lunch with me. And I don't really know what was talked about or what happened at this lunch, but it was really cool. I mean, they chefed up this amazing, most delicious meal, and then they put it on these, I don't know what kind of leaf it is, but it's a giant leaf. And then we went down and sat on this big rock right along the river. And I'll post a video or some pictures from it, and it was just so cool. And then I was able to ask them some questions through Malida. Of course, she helped translate. And so I was able to ask them about the traditional shirts that they wear, which are very colorful and very detailed and intricate and woven. And so that was just really cool, because, I mean, who gets to sit down in a village along the river eating Thai food made by local Thai women in their village, and they are just so smiley and excited, and you're all just happy to be. It was just, who gets to do this? How did I hack life that I get to do this? It was just so cool. I don't understand how I get this lucky, but I do feel super, super lucky to have had that experience. And so Malida really made a lot of that possible. And another thing that she organized was for these two specific women in the village, P. Do and P. Por, who are a mother and daughter. And I was able to sit with them. They welcomed us into their home, and we sat there, and I was able to ask them about their lives and questions about their lives. And that was all possible due to Malida, and so I'm super excited to share that part of my time there as well. And another super fun thing that Malida did was tell me all about her wedding and different traditions in a Karen wedding, and it was super cool. And I am gonna post a blog post about it later, well, actually this week, so you should look out for that, because I'm also going to talk about my time staying in the rural village, because I coincidentally happened to go to a wedding in a Karen village because the family I was staying with, their neighbors were getting married, and it's like a whole village thing. Everybody comes, everybody participates, and so I wasn't really able to ask them about it because they don't speak English, but one of their family friends had come, and she did speak English and helped translate when we were having dinner. And so we went over there and like participated in dancing, and I got to watch them do a few of their ceremonies and different things. And so that was really amazing. And the chances that you end up at a Karen wedding in a village in rural Thailand are slim, but apparently never zero. And so I obviously couldn't pass up the opportunity to go attend. And I felt a little bit like an intruder, but they didn't feel like I was an intruder. And so that was super cool. And there was a couple other girls at the homestay that night, so I wasn't alone. But you just never know where you're going to end up or what you're going to be doing. And so I asked Malida about her own wedding and about some of those traditions, and it was really, really cool. And I want to share some of them with you. And as much as I would like to tell you guys about the Karen weddings and everything, I think that it would be best to let her tell you. So I'm going to insert that or put it in a different episode. Yeah, so it was really, really cool to learn about that part of her life and just how traditions are really different between different cultures. And so that kind of leads me into the next people that I want to highlight, which are the local village women that I did get to interview, Pito and Pipor. And I have also posted a picture of them. I feel honored, really. They trusted me with their hearts, their stories. They gave me fruit and welcomed me into their home. And I recognize that they don't owe me this, and I feel incredibly grateful to learn from women like them. I am inspired by their grit and perspective, and I never thought I'd have an opportunity like this, and hope one day I can see them again. And I want to give a special thanks to Malida with Daughters Rising, who did translate for both parties during this interview and connected us, and it would not have been possible without her. So Pito is an 85-year-old woman who lives in the village of Mae Sapak, and she has been married to her husband, with whom she shares 6 children, one of them being Pipor. She's also a grandmother, and she lived in the village of Mae Sapak when it was merely a jungle with only 3 houses. And as she grew up, more people came to the village and built homes, and she watched it grow. And now it's a full-fledged, there's homes everywhere. It's definitely more than just a jungle and 3 houses. And she never got to go to school, but she does recall some memories from her childhood when, during the Japanese War, soldiers had come in and ravaged the village and stole things. And she remembers needing to flee the village for 3 days and her mother carrying her. And then they could return, but they had to stay quiet. So living in the village wasn't necessarily always feeling safe. So I asked Pito what it's like to be a mother in the village and if people work together to raise their families, because, I think about that phrase, it takes a village. And so she said it was really difficult to be a mother in the village. And mostly at that time, the roles were that the father go and work outside the home and the mother take care of the kids while also working. And she remembers carrying her youngest on her back and another child on the front while she worked. And at the time, there weren't motorbikes or trucks in the area, and so she walked everywhere. And in the cold season, she didn't have a jacket or blanket for the children. She said that sometimes the neighbors helped take care of the kids, but mostly you had to take care of your kids yourself. But now it's different. Both men and women may go outside the home for work. Another thing I asked her was if she likes when people come to visit, and she said that she loves it. And it helps to bring income and gives her a chance to practice her English since she didn't have a chance to go to school. And she actually used to have a homestay where tourists could come and stay for 20 baht per night. Baht is their local currency. And she was sad when people couldn't come anymore and really loves to share her culture. And she said, if someone comes to stay, the Karen people will welcome you in and make you feel like family. And then I asked her what some things about the Karen culture that she'd like to share were. And she said that growing up, they believed in the spirit of the jungle, and they asked the spirit for healing and protection. And when someone who was in the house was sick, they would go to the forest to perform a ceremony and ask the spirit for healing, and they'd return home to see if it worked. And I asked if they used any medicines, and she said that they only used natural medicines from plants in the jungle, and that she thinks herbal medicines are a lot healthier than the chemicals and pharmaceutical things. And it was really, really cool just to learn about different ways that people treat illnesses around the world. And now I can't pronounce some of the herbs that she had said, but she would say like, this is used for stomach upset, or this is used for headache, or this or that. And so it was like, oh my gosh, she's never popped an ibuprofen in her life. But I've also never chewed on, the herb that she was talking about. And maybe I should take a page from her book. Now, another thing that she wanted to talk about that I thought was really, really cool that I really want to share about the Karen people is that one tradition she wanted to share was the wrist tying ceremonies, and that they do this before they plant rice again and before they harvest the rice. And the rice is a big part of their culture, and that's why I think it's cool to share this. And so before they plant the rice, they ask the spirit from the jungle to protect the rice, help it grow well as protect the people and keep them healthy to work on the rice. When it's time for the harvest, they thank the spirit from the jungle for providing those things. And during the harvest, they actually can't say the word elephant, because elephants are big and may scare the small rice, causing the spirit to go away. And if they do say it, then we need to go do the ceremony again and ask the spirit to come back. The wrist tying is a way of thanking them. Now, what happens at these ceremonies is that every family member of the family must be present, and you have to keep the wrist ties on for at least 3 days and 3 nights. After that, they can take them off or just wait until they break off. And after the ceremony, they enjoy the first meal with the new rice as a family. The first step is to cook the rice. Then they kill the chickens or pigs. The first to eat is the leader of the family, and then it goes down, mother, oldest sibling, down to the last child. She said it was really difficult to do because not every family could always come. And so they switched from believing in the spirit of the jungle to practicing Buddhism, so they can still do the ceremony even if all family members are not present. And I asked her what makes her happy, and she said it's to see her children and family happy. And I asked her what are her dreams. And she said, I don't want anything for the future anymore. Each day is a good day for me. I don't have much money, but we are taken care of. I just want to be with my family here. And with that being said, I next interviewed her daughter, P. Poor. Now, P. Poor is a 52-year-old Karen woman living in Mesa Park. And she's married to her husband, with whom she shares 2 children. And she also didn't go to school as a child, but she was able to get a few lessons from a teacher in the village once her kids were a little bit older. So with P. Poor, we really honed in on the traditional shirts, and I was able to ask them a lot about that, and I just want to share it. They are traditional to the Karen culture, and the weaving the shirts is something that every Karen woman must learn to do. And it's all weaved by hand, which takes about 1 month. After that, you sew it together by hand as well, and they don't use any machines, so it takes a long time. And if you want more colors or decorations, it takes even longer. And the mother makes a dress for the girls and a shirt for the boys, and it represents the love of the mother for her child. She takes a lot of time to make it, and when she's weaving, she's blessing it for that child. And then once they get married, they make them a new one, because after you get married, you can't wear the white shirt anymore, especially if you're a woman. So before each daughter gets married, the mother will make them a red shirt and skirt for them while blessing the daughter and her future family. And so I asked what those colors meant. And because the reason that they have certain colors for before a marriage, the wedding, and after is because they used to only have black, white, and red, and now they have like every color you could think of. So you would wear white before you're married, red for the wedding, and black after you're married. But now there's other colors, and you can wear them anytime. And so I asked her if they like other people to wear them, because I saw them for sale in the shop, and I was like, oh, people are getting a lot of cancellations for cultural appropriation these days. So I wanted to know, what do you think about people who aren't Karen wearing these shirts? And you know what? They said that they're very happy to share it with other people, and they love to see foreigners wear them, and they want to help them understand the meaning of it. So, because if you wear it, it means you're wearing a blessing from the people who made it too. And that is just so freaking beautiful. So I think, honestly, we get really, really quick to cancel people. And okay, don't cancel me for saying this. But essentially, yes, sometimes people need to be called out for their cultural appropriation. But sometimes we also need to do some research and speaking to people, real people, and understanding that they want to share their culture. And so just know, if you're ever thinking about buying a Karen shirt, they would love for you to wear it. And I would have bought one, but I was backpacking, and so my backpack was already bursting at the seams when I got there, and I physically did not have any more room. Otherwise, I would have. I was really grateful to have that time to be able to sit down with those women and have that experience, and I just was reflecting on, how the heck, sorry, this isn't a PG-13 podcast. How the hell did I get so incredibly lucky and fortunate to have this opportunity to sit down with these incredible, amazing women in their home and ask them about their lives and share it with everybody else? It's just incredible. It's amazing. And I have the full interviews also linked below. Those were posted to 100 Royal Women because that's what the profiles were for, but you can also find them on my website and in the show notes. So next I want to talk about Kham Hom. Kham Hom is a really amazing young woman who was a scholarship recipient from Daughters Rising, and she now works with them. And so that's how I got to know her. Kham Hom is a 28-year-old woman from Myanmar, and she did grow up in a small village in Myanmar in northern Shan State. And there are many conflicts in this area which bring insecurity and instability because the town is on the border of China. Many armed groups come to fight over who can take control. Drug problems, lack of education, and numerous political parties create a lack of unity among people. And Kham Hom is one of the very few people from her village who passed high school and had the opportunity to go study abroad. So when she finished high school in 2012, she was unable to go to university as her parents could not afford the costs. She joined Ka Dai organization, which teaches English and Thai language alongside various other skills, and she attended school there and then worked for them after. During that time, she really, really wanted to go to university, and it was important to her parents, and it was important to her because her mother was never able to attend school and her father had to drop out to help his parents work. And so her younger brothers also had to drop out to help work on the family farm. So she's the only one in her family who made it to high school. And she was the first of the 9 students in her class to get accepted into university. Kham Hom is a hard worker. So she was accepted to Chiang Mai University and she didn't have a scholarship secured, but she was scared that if she didn't go right away that she wouldn't get accepted the next year. And so her parents told her, don't worry, just go. And a really beautiful thing that they did is that they actually sold their family farm to fund the expenses. And she was also working every job she could find, from cleaning houses to selling food in the market. The university saw how hard she'd been working and awarded her a tuition waiver for 3 years, but she still needed assistance for the living expenses. And so she said that she had to spend a lot of money up front because she didn't have anything. And one thing that really struck me was when she said, I didn't have much money for food. Sometimes I would spread 1 can of fish over 1 week. It's the kind of experience that teaches us not to give up. Meeting her just made me reflect so much on how education has always been a given to me. I did not have to go any further than probably 15 minutes to go to elementary school. I was able to get education. It was a given. I never had to fight for my education, and going to university, it was expensive, but I was able to do it. I was always going to be able to do it if I wanted. And so when I sit here and think about how privileged that is and how I would complain about not wanting to go to class, it just honestly makes me want to hit my past self upside the head, because what in the actual hell did I have to complain about? Yes, I got scholarships. Yes, I got loans. Yes, I got grants, but I was still able to go to school. And I am so incredibly amazed by Kham Hom. I mean, she was determined to make a better life for herself, and she did it. And so this is where Daughters Rising comes in, and they were able to fill that gap to give her the living expenses money. And so ever since then, in 2017, she's been involved with Daughters Rising, and it's really grown since then. And so she's helped with Daughters Rising for a few years, and then she, after completing her bachelor's degree in social science, she did return to Myanmar to fill a contract she had with that Kadai organization that she had worked with and studied with earlier. And so now she's returned to Thailand to again work with Daughters Rising. And her dream is to be a social worker helping local people in the community. And it was really special because she said that the founder, Alexa, is her inspiration for her kindness and dedication to helping people around her. I asked Kham Hom if she's ever able to return back to Myanmar to see her family, and she said yes, but it's really tricky. She gets to go back once a year for about 2 to 3 days, and it's a day-long trip each way, and she has to come back to get back to work. And getting across the border is extensive as they check all of your things and you have to answer all their questions correctly. There's many armed groups and they may suspect that you're a dictator from some other group. So you just have to be really careful even when you're doing nothing wrong. And she's just so strong and facing these things with courage. And so I asked her some things that are more lighthearted. I asked her what makes her happy, and she said seeing other people happy because she loves to help people and make them smile. To close it out on her, she said that if she could give a message to others is that when people grow up and have education, they can be a good leader for their community. And with this, she wants to encourage young people to pursue higher education to support their family, children, and come back and work for their communities. If that happened, she believes people would be more happy and the community would be more stable. In quote, she says, "Many women from Myanmar are raised to believe they will grow up to be a housewife, and I don't want it to be like that. They are not only that, they are and can be more than that. I want them to study and see the world wider than that. In my village, very few women have leadership roles. I want women to be a leader." She hopes to be a role model for young women in her village. And truthfully, Kham Hom is a role model to all of us. Her passion, perseverance, bravery, and strive for leadership are a force to be reckoned with. The last person that I'd like to introduce you to is somebody that I also spent a lot of time with, and her name is Win. Now, Win is a fake name that we're using in order to protect both her and her family's safety and privacy. Win works with Daughters Rising and was originally a student with one of their scholarships after she got a full scholarship from Bangladesh Asian University for Women for tuition, but it didn't cover her living expenses. Now, Win has been through a lot in her life, and when she was just 14 years old, her dad had retired from his job working for the government, and her mom had passed away from being sick. And so when she passed, they didn't really know what to do, and he was too old to work. And so her and her siblings were in school, but it was really expensive to go to school in Myanmar. And so then somebody had told them about life on the border, and if they could make it to Thailand, they could go to school. She said that they really struggled for a while until they got confirmation that they could go study at the refugee camp. But then once they did, they studied at a refugee camp in Thailand at a Karen school. And that was really difficult for her. She had to go back in grades because the Thailand grades were different from Myanmar, and she wasn't able to speak the Karen language. So she had to start over again and was in that school for a few years. Not only was it difficult academically, but it was also difficult socially because they were from different ethnic groups, and a lot of people hated Burmese people because of military abuse, and Karen people were fighting for their freedom for 7 decades. So when these Burmese people came, they didn't really like it, and she felt a lot of discrimination and punishment for simply just for being Burmese. But she was passionate and she wanted to learn their language and learn about them and teach them that Burmese people are not the same people that they have in their mind, and that they also had gone through some abuse due to military government. And she studied really hard, and little by little she was able to become friends with some people. Now, she did have to jump through some hoops to get to university after this. After high school, she's required to work 1 year in the community before going on to that higher education. So she worked in the camp with the American Refugee Committee as a health education trainer. But the camp education is not recognized either by Myanmar government or Thailand government. So to get that recognized education, she had to improve her English and applied for an English immersion program. She was then chosen to study at a school located in a post-conflict area in Karen State along the border. It was a 2-year program, and she lived away from her family in a Karen community to learn English for that first year, and then the following year, she returned to the camp for an internship at a sex and gender-based violence committee. She worked with women who had suffered from domestic violence and worked closely with their case managers who dealt with the cases, and that work is what helped her to see that she wanted to become a woman and children protection specialist. She started to seek out accredited university programs for this job, which led her to a higher education program in Mae Sot, Thailand. And there she got the equivalent to an American high school certificate, and so after she had that, she had the right documents to be able to apply for university admission and a scholarship. Now, she was granted a full scholarship to Hong Kong University if she could meet academic requirements, and she had passed writing, interview, and was chosen for a scholarship, but her English score wasn't high enough, and she tried to get this secured, but she was nervous because the admission and scholarship team told her that she'd have to try again the next semester, but even if she did that, she wouldn't be guaranteed to be granted the scholarship again, so she felt her dreams totally crushed. By then, she was 24 and feeling lost, and she found the Asian University for Women in Bangladesh because she wanted to study politics, philosophy, and economics. They had a decent ranking and a program she was interested in, and she applied there and once again got a full scholarship. I know, she's incredible. It wasn't necessarily the best situation for her to go to Bangladesh as a majority Muslim country, and the political situation between Myanmar and Bangladesh wasn't the best. But getting a scholarship is especially hard for migrant and refugee people, and if she waited another year, she'd have another slim chance of getting again. She said, I had to take the chance quickly, and you cannot wait. In the interview that I've posted below, as I'm not going to go through the full interviews of any of these, of course, there's so much more that I've learned from these people than all I've been able to fit in an hour-long episode about a few different people. But after she finished her studies, she knew that Alexandra of Daughters Rising was looking for someone to help so that she could shift her focus to try Lai Orchid. And so now she does especially work for the students, and she interviews people for scholarship considerations and answers their questions and organizes that type of information. And so now she also researches and collaborates with other organizations in Thailand in order to put on some of their workshops that they do and the collaborations. Something that I really appreciated about our conversation was her outlook on life and being an empowered woman. And so I really want to share this part because I asked her, when are you married? And she said, I'm not married, I'm single because I feel like I just want to rely on myself and be supportive to my family and friends. Once I've finished my studies, I don't want to just give my education to a husband. I don't want to rely on other people. I don't want the extra stress of a relationship. I have enough stress as it is when it comes to personal, family, social. I don't want to worry about giving an explanation when I can't be with them. If I can find a man who can understand this, then sure. And something that I really appreciated that I hadn't got during our interview, but just sometime when we were hanging out, was that something she had said about wanting to inspire women, and she's creating a life for herself, and it's beautiful. And what she said was, I believe women aren't born for domestic works, childbearing, household chores. Men can also take this role. But nowadays, men like that are very rare. They think they need to find money and give money and have the women take care of the family and cook and clean. I feel like 80% of men think like this. What I meant to say is that there are not men and women roles. People are just human. So I don't want to get married. Women also have their development, their future. If we don't build our own future and just get married and rely on the husband, one day they may leave you or decide they don't want you. Then what are you to do if you didn't strive for an education? Women will stay in domestic abuse situations because they feel like they cannot leave. but there are many single moms who are working hard and can give a better future for their kid. I don't want to depend on a man, and I don't want other women to feel like they have to. Woo! Bars. For now, I just want to rely on myself, work hard, and take care of my family. My father is 75 now, and I want to take care of him and my sisters who have been taking care of him all this time. Now I can work, so this is my time to give back to my family. I love to take care of people. Isn't she just so cool? She just has such a wonderful outlook, and I really, really want young women to hear that message that she just wants she wants to work on her own life and build her own life and get an education in her career and not just focus on being in a relationship. And I think that's really cool because I just want people to hear it. In Close About When, I asked her what's something she'd like people to know. And she said, I want people to not be narrow-minded when they don't understand. For example, an ethnic group might not like another ethnic group because of the stories they've heard or pictures they've seen on the media, but not everyone is the same. I'm Burmese, and we cannot generalize people. Some are good, some are bad. But if you generalize and treat everyone like they're bad, it's only negative things we bring to those people. You have to understand research by yourself and understand not everyone is like this. I talk about this because belonging to a specific ethnic group, you may lose opportunity or chances because of the place you grew up. When I moved to Thailand, because I am not Karen or Christian, I could not get a job. We cannot generalize. And I just think Wynn is such an inspiration, and she's worked through some really, really difficult things. She has a heart of gold, and she just wants to give back, and I'm happy to be somebody that can provide that spotlight for her, even if it's an anonymous one. So, with that being said, that's all I got, everyone. If you are interested in diving more into each one of these people's stories, putting a face to the name, any of that, I have linked their full profiles, interviews below in the show notes, as long as links to Daughters Rising and Lai Orchid and James De La Cloche Photography. And of course, as always, please, please, please rate, review, follow, share. It really, really helps me out and helps me to be able to keep making episodes and interviewing cool people. I feel so lucky to have been able to spend a week with these people. I was welcomed into a local Karen family's home in the village nearby. I was graciously transported to different places around Chai Lai and fed at the cafe every day. I had lunches with women in the village and played with kids at the children's house. My friends Malida and Wynn stuck by my side, showing me around, shared their lives and stories with me. They taught me about the conflicts facing women in their corner of the world. Local women welcomed me into their home for an afternoon to tell me about life in the village. I've learned so much, and I wish I could have stayed longer. I can't wait to return. I'm so grateful to you, Daughters Rising and Lai Orchid. My heart is warm. And that's what I got.